It's 3 o'clock, Megan. We started.
Okay.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Megan. Welcome to the what is today?
November something.
20th? Live stream. Yes, we are on top of this. So on top of this. But we have fancy new audio microphones, so I hope that things sound better.
Yeah, I'm sorry. You have to hear both of us this time.
Yes, and a better tripod. And so this one is going to be great. This one's going to be really great.
Excellent.
First thing to tell everybody is that if you're going to be in town on December 11th, where we are, Covington, Kentucky, that we are having our annual open day from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. and ask to see the clock. But we'll have blemished tools, blemished books for 50% off.
Blemished help.
We will be blemished.
We will be blemished.
I'm sure by then. So, so we have a whole bunch of questions, and we're going to do a couple demos. So you can kick it off with the first question, and then I will answer that, and then we'll go back and forth or something like that.
Okay. Well, first demo.
The first demo
is how to make a Kentucky gentleman. While you're opening that, what is the Lost Art Press / Crucible project pipeline for the start of 2023?
Thank you very much for asking that, Taunton Press. Maybe it's not Taunton, maybe it's Astragal. We have several books in the pipeline right now, including Megan's Dutch tool chest book. We have Kara's...
Any day now.
Any second now. We have Kara Gebhardt's children's book on the Nanu oak. I know I didn't say that right, but we're having a Welsh pronunciation guide made for that so that we will say it right. We also have George Walker and Jim Tolpin finishing up their book on hand tools that teach you geometry, and it's called, I didn't even have to pay for that, Euclid's Door, and if you look up Euclid's Door, that'll help explain why it's called that. And we love the crazy titles. Tool-wise, we hope to have the sliding bevel, which I hope to do a little demo of later here very shortly. The planing stops also shortly after that. We have a very cool, it's a nail apron, but it's not really an apron. A very cool thing you wear around your waist and put things in. It's the marsupial pouch, which will be very cool because it will be screen printed with the "Don't despair, nothing without labor" thing. You have anything else? Anything else I'm forgetting?
No.
Oh, there is. There's several other things
There
I'm forgetting. Yeah, but we'll get to that. I'm working on another book too, which will be a short one and be out probably in the first half, I hope. But and that's it. Let's go.
Okay, sorry.
I'll ask the next one.
Okay.
Question 2. I am pretty new to hand woodworking, and I have a real hard time getting an edge straight and true on long stock. I usually end up putting a nice graceful curve in the middle of the board. The Stanley No. 7 that I am using has a nice flat sole. Signed, Brent. What's his problem?
User error. User error. You're probably tipping as you come on or off. Think about scooping out the middle as you use the plane. It could also be that you're not staying straight down in the cut and that you're moving your plane back and forth. If you have a camber on it, that could be a problem. Hard to say without seeing, but my guess is you're not pushing down properly in the middle as you come across the piece.
Yeah, the natural tendency of a hand plane is to make a curve over the length surface. That's because the iron isn't coplanar with the sole, it sticks out. So the solution when you're just learning is to take what we call stop shaving. So if this is the edge of the board, I'll take my joiner plane and I'll scoop out just the middle. You know, there's maybe 3 or 4 inches here at the end, and when the tool stops cutting, then you have created this concavity, and then you shoot straight through until you get a full-length shaving. And if you do it right, and it's actually fairly easy to do, then you'll have a straight edge. So that's kind of the solution.
I probably read you having written that 1,000 times and completely forgot. Okay.
Okay. What would be your recommendations for 5 projects that a hobbyist woodworker should aspire to build from the growing LAP universe? Let's assume we already have a workbench, toolbox, and shop appliances. Please feel free to delete my suggestions for the first 2. Maybe 1, a boarded bench. Number 2, the dovetailed school box. What do you think?
Ooh. Well, I suppose it depends on what it is you want to learn, but I'd probably, it's not quite part of the universe yet, but I would actually say the Dutch tool chest, even though you have tool chest, I'm assuming you mean the ATC, simply because it teaches you a lot of different joints. You could learn many of those same joints in the boarded bookcase. That might be a good choice.
Yeah, I like the projects in the joinery and cabinet maker. It starts off with the nailed sort of book box, and then it moves to the dovetailed
school
box, and it goes, yes, and then it goes to the thing with drawers, the chest of drawers.
Yeah, I don't actually like that chest of drawers.
I love that chest of drawers.
Okay,
it's
then.
upstairs. Well, it teaches you everything.
It does, it's true.
I mean, mortise and tenon, dovetail. And then I would probably build a small table. I think a table has a lot of really good things to learn. And then after that, I would probably build a Bombay highboy.
Really? Because I was going to go for something like a campaign furniture with as many possible bits of hardware.
Since Mr. Schwartz, who's my grandfather, said I could ask anything as long as it's short, I would like to know what your and his
I think I'm the your.
greatest joy and disappointment have been in both your careers in woodworking. Signed, Sam. So you can go first, since your.
Mine are actually the same thing. Probably working for Popwood and getting fired from Popwood. Getting fired from Popwood was the best thing. No, they were both really good, actually. It's just that when I did get fired, I was distraught. I was devastated. I thought my life was over and I'm going to have to go work in a call center somewhere. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but I didn't want to do it. I'd be terrible at that. But it turned out to be a great thing on all fronts. So that is my greatest joy and my greatest disappointment.
Greatest joy has been bringing the work of other authors, to publishing it and bringing it to light.
Oh, you are so altruistic compared to me.
But it's true.
I know.
That's why I got into journalism, was to present other viewpoints.
Fair enough.
And so that gives me the greatest joy.
I look like an asshole now. Okay. I already did. It's all right.
Right. Look, my greatest joy is making my first million.
I'll never get to say that. I'll never get to say it.
And the biggest disappointment in my life, I don't know. It's been the books that we haven't done and that have been lost because of people who died and didn't get to finish it. Those have been the biggest kind of bummers for me.
Where are we?
Chris, in the Anarchist tool chest, you mentioned a hand crank drill press that you planned on using in the future. What happened?
You want me to go get it? From the pile under the... Isn't it out there?
No, I finally gave it away.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, I gave it away.
Oh.
I had 2 of them. I had a Miller's Falls, and then I had a Rando one. And I tried in vain to get both of them working. I was going to have to get parts machined for them. And then we bought this building, and I had to deglitterify it and spend 5 years getting us to this point.
We're almost done with deglitterifying it.
We are. And then at some point, I just said, I just can't carry these 75-pound drill presses around anymore, because we were moving them.
I would swear there was still one under the chain hoist that we never use.
Nope. Somebody saw it when they were in the machine room.
Really?
I said, "You want it?" And he said yes. And I said, "You have to get it out of here today."
And the Emirate vise?
The Emirate vise also was rehomed too. We just could not. I could not design a bench that would fit in this room that would suit the overhang and everything we would need for it. And so it was just sitting there under the bench.
I know,
under my desk.
I kicked it all the time.
Got kicked all the time.
Then you put it under my bench.
Yes, because that's my prerogative.
Yeah.
And then we had somebody who came in who could really use it, who was doing pattern making.
Yep.
And that's what I want, is to have it used properly.
Again with the altruism. Christopher Altruistic Shores.
Okay.
If you were customers of Lost Art Press and could only own 3 Lost Art Press books, which 3 would you choose?
Dan.
Dan, sorry.
Go ahead.
Anarchist Tool Chest, and gosh, and after that, there's so many that are good. Calvin Cobb, Radio Woodworker. Truly, I love that book. It's a lot of fun.
Hi, Roy.
Hi, Roy.
What are our books?
There's so many of them. Anarchist Design Book. Yeah, there we go.
Okay. I probably would get The Essential Woodworker by Robert Waring, just because it is probably the most important book for hand tool woodworkers.
See, I disagree. I think Anarchist Tool Chest is. Because without that, you don't know which tools to get.
Okay. Get them both.
Yeah, get them
both. This is a minority opinion, but, the Roubo on furniture book, for me personally, was a real eye-opener. And it's not a beginner book, but that's one that just is, one of my favorites. But I probably would recommend The Essential Woodworker, probably the Anarchist Workbench. So they had a decent bench to start with, and the Anarchist Design Book, so you have stuff to build. I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, I should have thought some more.
We don't know. Okay. No idea. Get them all or whatever. What are the benefits of work holding with holdfasts and a planing stop compared to work holding between screw advanced bench dogs, pro and con?
Well, there are many, I think, and the number one is speed. That when you start working with pieces of different length, that you don't have to be screwing and moving dogs and everything. You just have a planing stop, and or if you really need it, doe's foot and a holdfast. Normally you don't.
I try and even use a holdfast. If I can, I'll bump it up against something just so I can flip everything around. The less I have to unscrew, unhook things, the better.
Oh, absolutely.
Faster.
Much faster for me.
Much faster.
If you were maybe doing the same thing over and over again, or if you were doing something with a lot of lateral pressure like moldings, I use a sticking board, but a lot of people love the screw
so easy
vices.
to bend it though.
That's what I don't like about it, is that
either.
you have to be really careful so that it doesn't bow off the work, and then so many problems.
Well, and to what degree are your views on these issues influenced by the publication of Roubo's books and promotion of the Roubo style bench and the marketing of the holdfast and upcoming planing stop?
Mm-hmm.
And the not inconsiderable influence and prestige this has brought to an otherwise small publisher.
Wow, this is a little hostile.
I won't say this person's name. It's probably my voice that's doing the.
Okay. All right. Well.
I just sound hostile.
I built my first Roubo bench 2005, which was way before we did any of this translation and.
It's the only carving I know of that you've ever done. Was on that chop.
I didn't do that. That was Bob.
You didn't do it at all then.
No, I've done some carving on the ombres.
Sorry, I know. I'm just teasing you.
But wow, I built that bench to find out in 2005 what the real deal was, because I had used Scandinavian/German benches, Euro benches for so many.
And that was
years.
well before your publication of Roubo's book. So.
Well, this was before we started Lost Art Press.
Right. Yeah, by 2 years. Yeah.
And then what I think sort of settles the argument. I don't need it settled for me personally, because I work at the bench every day with mostly just a planing stop. But what settles it is when you open the Roubo book, whether it's translated or not, and you can see that everything in that book was built with these simple benches.
Yep.
Way more crazy than anything that gets made today.
That marquetry is something else.
Well, it's also just the mechanical desks,
Yep.
and it's no joke that they could do a lot with a little, and that was what led me to think that maybe we also could.
And they wore such nice clothes doing it.
Yes, the frilly things. And about the planing stop and the holdfast, we don't sell a lot of those.
We don't sell any planing stops.
We don't sell a lot of. Well, we haven't sold anything, but I think sometimes people might think that we're bigger than we are. We're a very tiny company. We are 1/100th the size of Veritas, 1% the size of Lee-Nielsen or something like maybe 2% the size. I don't know, but it's tiny. We're this tiny company with tiny.
It's got 2 people.
Yeah, it's two people. And
plus some freelancers.
Sometimes I think people, maybe we just do good marketing or we seem more important than we are, but just inadvertently. But
Yeah.
I mean, the honest to gosh truth is that the reason we made the Holdfast is that so I could have a 1-inch Holdfast.
Right.
Because you couldn't buy that commercially.
Right.
And I thought this is wonderful, so why don't we make it for other people? Same with the tooth planing stop is, I think they're wonderful, and these are cheaper than blacksmith made. So
Right, and they're going to be so much easier to install too, which is very cool. So.
yeah, but is it a conspiracy? Yes.
Yes, it's a cabal.
Yeah. Okay.
It's the Lost Art Press Crucible Tool Cabal. Considering, and we go on, considering benchworking has brought, no.
Benchworking professional woodworkers
Has
have
abandoned the Roubo style of work holding these last 200 years until this recent LAP-led renaissance. What makes LAP confident you are promoting a genuine return to superior work practices and not an inferior temporary fad amongst the hobbyists?
Well, we've had about 15 years since I started spouting off this nonsense.
And you weren't the first person to bring back the Roubo.
No,
everyone forgets that.
Yeah, well, not everybody.
Well,
I don't.
Many people. I
Yeah,
don't.
but it didn't really catch fire.
No, it didn't.
I mean, several people built it, but Rob Terrell built the first reproduction that I know of, and that was in Scott Landis's The Workbench book,
Which you now publish.
which we now publish. So the conspiracy continues.
Oh my God!
I know.
It's true.
It is.
Oh,
It
shit.
is Roubo-anon. And anyway, I think that both systems are perfectly valid. I have used both quite a lot as a professional. We have 10 years of building furniture, and I will gladly burn this only a bench.
15 years.
Yeah, I know. And I would gladly burn this only a bench in exchange for being able to work on my Roubo in peace.
Yeah. Although it is nice for me to pile stuff on.
It's a beautiful platform.
It's right behind my bench.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cheers.
Yep. How do you feel about joining corners with dovetailed miter splines rather than dovetails? Don't the dovetailed splines provide mechanical strength in both directions? Asks Lawrence.
You know what? Yes.
Yes.
I mean, both are completely fine. I think making mitered corners
It's harder.
Yeah, it's harder.
It's harder.
It's harder than dovetailing.
It's harder to have
always,
them look good.
to do it right and
Yeah.
get all four together and closed
Yeah.
up.
Crappy miters with splines aren't going to stay together. Crappy dovetails will stay together.
No, but he's talking about dovetail splines.
Oh, he is?
So those will stay
Dovetailed
together.
miters. Oh, yeah.
So
Yep,
that's putting
yep.
a dovetail
Yep,
shape through
yep,
the
yep.
miter. Yeah, I mean, either are fine. I just think dovetails are a lot easier.
And they're plenty strong.
And they're both plenty strong.
Yep.
But I mean, I think it's purely an aesthetic or what you like making choice.
Right. Okay. I don't know the answer to this one.
So let's skip it.
Okay.
This is a good one.
I have resawn several 2-inch to 4-inch wide, 4-foot lengths of 8-quarter sawn white oak to thickness, roughly 6-quarter and 4-quarter. I plan to use the thicker pieces for a desk I'm building for my wife, hope she's not watching, while using the thinner pieces for a variety of box projects for holiday gifts, etc. However, ellipses. All of the pieces have now bowed to some degree, and I'm wondering, is there a practical way to correct this uneven drying process?
So what has happened, to recap, is, which happens a lot when you resaw on the bandsaw thick stuff into semi-thick stuff, not veneer, because it doesn't matter.
It turns into potato chips.
It turns into potato chips. And this can be for a variety of reasons. One, it's your blade is bowing, and so it's auto chipped, immediately. The second thing is that the interior of the board is still wet, and then you have 2 boards, and one face is wet and one face is dry, and so potato chip. The third option behind door number 3 is that there's tension in the board and that you have released by resawing it. All 3 are completely possible. What I tell people to do is, when I do resawing, I always leave extra, like this person did.
Oh, sorry, I missed that.
Yeah, and you can leave extra, but use really dry stuff that has been sitting around for a long time.
Yep.
So then it's just tension if you have that problem. And resawing is hard. It really is.
Yeah, I suck at it.
You can wet the other side of the board and put it under some pressure and hope that it'll kind of take some of it out.
And it might.
It might, but it might not. So wood is weird, and it hates you.
Yeah.
And it wants you to die.
That's door number 4.
That's door number 4. Wood is weird. So don't resaw like that. I mean, let it use just stuff that has been
really
around
dry
in your shop for a couple of years. That's the best answer.
Yep.
Okay.
Even though it's quarter sawn.
Oh yeah, it doesn't matter. I mean, it's wood.
Right.
It hates you.
So basically, we don't really have an answer.
Yeah, we do.
Well, okay, it might work. Doesn't hurt to try. When needing to increase the thickness of a seat or tabletop in preparation for a through tenon joint, is it okay to glue strips of wood across the surface, or does this too greatly constrict grain movement?
Yeah, the answer is yes, don't do that.
Right.
So if you're trying to thicken up a
I should grab
top,
that.
Yeah, you can grab that. I mean, that shows how to do it. When you're trying to thicken up a top, you can use battens across grain, but they should be dovetailed into the, here we go, thank you, Megan. This shows that we thickened this up. I thickened this up for this tenon. These are dovetailed in here. Now you would think there's a cross grain problem. There is, but magically nothing happens because wood is magic and it wants you to die. But this will keep this in here, and it doesn't rely on a glue joint. If you just glue this strip on here, the glue's going to fail because this is like more than 6 inches, and the glue's not flexible enough to handle that. If you're going to just glue and thicken, which you can do, is glue them in line with the grain. So that's a flat face to flat face joint is going to be pretty strong. Might also want to put some screws in there or pegs, just because glue is not permanent.
Okay. And can you recommend any writing on perfectionism within the craft of woodworking?
Wow, perfectionism. I don't know. What do you think?
Perfectionism within the craft of woodworking.
I mean, the Krenov books.
The Krenov books, I guess. To make as perfectly as possible, though, is one of my favorite titles because perfection is not possible.
Yeah, the Roubo titles are interesting, but he doesn't really delve into it, but it is a subtext throughout the entire book that taught me a lot. But I think James Krenov's books really address that, I mean, one of the biggest questions that never gets asked is, when is it done?
When is it done, yeah.
And that is really impossible
I don't think that's unanswerable. Each maker has to decide that, I think.
Yeah, but I think he's seeking some sort of framework to work in.
Yeah, I don't know. I look at Frank Strauss's work and think I can't do that. Nor would I try, because it's beyond me. But
he probably doesn't regard it as perfect.
I'm sure he doesn't. Yeah. So you work to the level of your own satisfaction, I think, and you have to decide what that is.
Yeah, but the problem is some people don't know when to stop.
True.
And that's a problem.
Yeah, but not one I can help with. So, Sawn versus riven, with the obvious exception of knotholes, grain run out, insect damage, rot, all of which saws generally ignore. Is there any objective proof or test that straight grain sawn wood is really inferior to riven wood?
For me, the objective test is a sledgehammer,
Right.
which I talk about in my new book. I have a thing called the sledgehammer test, which we can take riven wood and we can take sawn wood where the grain is straight from one to the other, put them up there and both hit the living snot out of them with sledgehammers. And that's about as much proof as I think a piece of wood needs.
Right.
I have no problem sawing out straight grain, and I think it's a great way if you don't have the room for, riving, or you can't get riven stock easily right now.
Yeah, but something else you write about in your new book is taking sawn wood from the store, and you can rive that.
Yes, you can also saw and rive wood.
Yeah, you can rive the wood after you've bought it.
That's true. Just like you can saw green wood, you can rive dry wood.
That's right. So you're not forced to stick with what you buy already milled in the state in which you bought it. You can change that.
Yeah.
So.
You are your own crawdad.
Something. Crawdad? Have another drink. Chris has talked about using curved irons on jointer planes. I think I understand how this allows you to adjust the cut by moving the center of the plane, but does it interfere with match planing or otherwise getting straight edges for panel glue-ups? How do you use a curved iron to get a good panel joint?
I don't match plane generally. I think it can be fiddly to try to get 2 long boards. You can match plane short stuff, but if you have 2 8-foot long boards, you have to clamp them up and then generally. So I don't match plane. I just make 2 straight edges is how I do it.
Right.
So match planing, it's not a problem. I don't think it's a problem with match planing, but I don't do it, so I'm not going to speak to that.
Right.
The way I do it is the iron is curved, and here's the edge. And so, like he said, I move it laterally if I need to straighten out the edge. That makes a square, straight edge. No, I mean, it's not, I can't see it with a stare. There's no light coming out of it. So, and then you put a little glue on it, or you breathe on it, or you look at it weird and it moves, but you clamp it together and you're fine. And, you know, curved irons and joiner planes have been the standard forever. I mean, I think that's in Moxon.
Sure, but also, don't you, what's the word I'm looking for? We scoop a tiny little bit out of the middle and clamp it only in the middle.
Oh, spring joints.
Spring joint, yeah. So I don't actually want it to be dead straight the whole way down.
Yeah, I don't either. Like we were talking about stop shavings. There are times where I will just do that stop shaving on the edge, and then I'll clamp it.
And then you clamp it, right.
And that's really good when the boards are somewhat wet, because the ends are going to want to dry out first, and it keeps the panel under sort of compression. And that's an old trick. Works really well.
Right, so anyway. How often do you prep stock by hand versus machine? Asked Dakota. I just did it. I just did it on camera. And I have to admit that that's the first time I've done it in a very long time. I don't do it very often at all. The only time it comes in handy, and this does come in handy actually, we have a 12-inch jointer in the back, and it actually only takes about 11 7/8. And if I have wood that's 15 inches wide, I'm not going to rip it just to run it over the jointer. I'm going to flatten one side of it enough to run it through the planer, which is 15 inches. Well, okay, don't I say 14 inch? If I have 14 and a half inch wide stock, I'm not going to rip it just so that I can run it through over the jointer. That would be insane. So it's useful to do it for that reason. So actually, when I'm doing ATC classes, I try to get as wide pieces of wood as I can, so I have fewer glue ups. So I do actually do one side and one side only to make it flat enough to run through the planer.
Yeah.
But that's it.
Yeah, you have to keep in mind that we are now doing this to make money and to make food. And so...
If I were doing it to lose weight, though, it would be excellent.
Yeah, that's a different program.
Yeah.
So we are very concerned about our time, and there are times when doing it by hand is the fastest. And like what you're saying is faster. And I will do my chair seats because I don't want to, you know, if I get 16 inch wide, I can't even go through the planer.
Right.
So my 16 inch wide chair seats are pretty much all prepped by hand. And I have, you know, so yeah, every chair I make that has a full width chair seat is prepped by hand. Also, I do a lot of riving, and that's hand prepping.
Well, that's true.
So it's a combination, and I don't really,
but
I don't even think about that as a distinction.
But I don't ever think, oh, I'm going to foursquare by hand, rip it to width by hand, plane it down by hand, unless it's too big for the machinery, typically.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Because we have the machines, so we'll use the machines.
Yes, and I'm getting old, frankly, and it hurts more now than it did 10 years ago when I first learned how to do it. So, where are we?
Business environment.
The business environment for toolmakers such as Lee Nielsen has possibly threatened their viability. What are the challenges that toolmakers face in the near term and long term? Asks Michael.
Wow, microeconomics. I can't speak to anybody else in their businesses. I don't know anything about how Lee Valley or Lee Nielsen are doing. I suspect they're fine. But I could say that, you know, we do tool making. And
it's our latest tool.
Yeah, and you know, we have the biggest problems are not supply chain; they're the prices. Is it steel and brass and labor? All those things continue to go up, which is just part of the business. I'm not complaining about it, but the price of the tools has to go up. Finding people who can do good work domestically here has always been a challenge, and it seems to be getting to be more of a challenge for us. But we have enough friends and know enough people, and you know, do enough of it ourselves to get it done. So long term, I think, you know, the biggest challenges are, you know, is woodworking going to be around? You know, I hope that it will be, and I think that it will be, but, you know, that's kind of the long term.
And arguably, is hand tool woodworking going to be around for the types of tools that Lie-Nielsen Veritas and you make? Because there weren't any 20 years ago.
Not good ones, but when society collapses, we'll all be using hand
That's
tools.
right.
So,
and we'll be in really good shape, except that we're old, so we might not be.
No, we'll be eaten first.
We'll be, that's right. Okay, moving on. Both Lie-Nielsen and Veritas sell toothed irons for their bevel-up jack planes, entirely aside from the question of how the hell do you sharpen something like that, the same way you sharpen anything else. Truly. What actual need do they fulfill, asks Dave.
Do I get to answer this?
Yeah, I was looking for your Schwarz toothed plane.
It's put away. Toothed irons they're sharpened just the way you normally sharpen a plain iron. You know, you sharpen the teeth on the stone, and the recesses don't get sharpened, but you create sharp furrows there that do the work. The reason toothing planes existed was to create a flat ground to accept veneer, the hot glue and the veneer, and it was thought that the toothy surface would give better grab, which doesn't happen to be how adhesives work, but that's okay. The other thing that I believe it was Lie-Nielsen people found out is that toothed irons are fantastic for planing figured stock.
And benchtop.
Yeah, benchtop, sure, but figured stock because it won't tear out. And that's really miraculous. So if you deal with a lot of curly maple, the toothed iron can you know, help you out there. But I just use a chip breaker real closely set, and I do fine. But there are lots of ways to solve the problem.
Yeah. I remember you did an experiment, though, for a little while where you were using a toothed iron on your workbench top.
Yeah. And the toothed
grip.
iron gave it a little more grip, and then the internet rose up and
told you were wrong, so
yes.
clearly
so
you had to stop.
I mean, to stop.
There's really no choice at that point.
The internet spoke.
That's right. You have to listen. Would you guys please make a quick listing or ranking of your currently preferred non-nasty finishes, perhaps an anarchist wood finish pamphlet?
Number one, I used oil, raw linseed oil and beeswax finish is probably my favorite.
Yep.
What's yours?
That's basically mine too.
Okay.
Milk paint?
Milk paint.
Actual milk paint?
Yeah, real milk paint is number two. Soap is up there. Shellac is up there.
Shellac, yeah, I like shellac. No finish at all on workbenches and stuff.
Yeah, no finish at all is the best.
It's the best one.
The best workbench
It's really
finish.
Fast too.
Yeah, and flawless surfaces.
That's right.
No runs or sags. Yeah, those are my favorites. Or just straight wax is also fine for especially for turnings or small objects. Or and straight oil can work too, but I really like the combination of oil and wax has been the one that we just have become really enamored with and works well.
I can't remember the last time I used something other than paint, which I use all the time because I do a lot of tool chests. Did you know that? I do a lot of tool chests.
Yeah, and
they're all over the damn shop.
You make them for a living, I hear.
Oh, not just that. It's just they're all over the damn shop. I got to get rid of some. Yeah, I can't remember the last time I used anything other than paint, wax, or the oil wax finish, or nothing. Ooh, varnish. I used the shop-made varnish just last night. Mm-hmm. See what it did to me? I forgot about it already.
Yeah, the VOC's got in your head.
That's right, they got in my head. Okay. I cut a hickory tree down and milled it into lumber, and it's dry now. Mm-hmm. And will be making my daughter her bedroom set from this hickory. Go with God, sir. I have made most of the furniture in our home from walnut and cherry, so hickory will be new to me.
Oh, yeah,
You're going to have so much fun. Most of the lumber looks mostly white cream color with a small amount of brown heartwood. I'm not wanting the rustic look that people normally use hickory for. If I use mostly or all the cream color with none of the brown, will the cream color stay light or will it darken over time?
It gets a little darker, but not dramatically. It doesn't turn crazy. I think the thing to remember is that dark woods get lighter over time and light woods get darker over time, and they all meet in the middle and it's brown.
Also, I'd love to hear how it goes with the hickory.
Oh, hickory's great. I love hickory.
Really?
And, oh, yeah.
It's so hard.
It's wonderful. That's why I love it.
So heavy.
Okay. I think it's awesome.
Okay. Sorry, Rick. You'll do great. When do you sharpen in your day-to-day work? How many times in an 8-hour day? Ben wants to know.
I sharpen almost every day, I'd say. I mean, today I sharpened 3 tools, but 4 tools, I think. But yeah, I mean, like I spend at least 6 hours at the bench every day.
Yeah. Yep. If I'm dovetailing a full-size ATC, I sharpen my chisels at every corner, actually, because you got to have really sharp ones to get nice, crisp lines with the pine. So
unless you have Christian Beckford's magic chisels.
Well, sure, but I do not have Christian Beckford's magic chisels. So I do it every corner. So what is that? Every 8 or 9 pins and tails.
Yeah. I also sharpen every time I ask myself, should I sharpen?
Should I sharpen? Yeah.
Because the
answer is yes.
The answer is, if you're asking the question, you know the answer.
Yeah, and ditto on plain blades. So.
Yeah.
Right. What is at least one tool you have hesitated to recommend because you do not want its price to soar?
Yes, I understand the Gordian knot nature of this question.
Yeah.
No, I don't care. You know,
Says
good
Eddie.
for you, Eddie.
Hi, Eddie.
That is an awesome question. And I have got this hammer. It is my favorite hammer. It's the best hammer ever made in the world. It is.
I know.
It
you
is.
do love
People
your
steal
hammer.
it all the time.
He bought me a really shitty hammer so that I wouldn't take his really good
It almost
one.
came to blows with Brendan over my hammer.
Yeah, but I still use this hammer.
And I will not ever speak the name of it because I want, in case I
will
lose
for
it.
a certain amount of money.
Yeah,
Pay
and
off my house.
I feel they're so hard to get because they were only made for a short period of time, and so I'm being so selfish here. But I'm going to be honest. Thank you, Eddie, for asking an honest question.
But we're not going to answer.
Sorry, Eddie, you don't get to know.
So this next part is mostly you. It's all about chairs. Actually, I can probably answer a lot of chair questions just by osmosis.
Chrismosis.
Chrismosis. When bending either steamed wood or comp wood, should it require a huge amount of force to bend 3 1/4 to 1 inch thick stock to a reasonable curve? The first time I tried it with my bench vise, I broke a persimmon bench dog, says Richard.
It does take a lot of force, and it's not the thickness that is important as much as the width. And so if you're bending 3/4 by 3/4, you can probably do that with hand strength and not have much problem. But when some of my arm bows are 3/8 wide, 1.5 wide, that requires a lot of grunting.
And I usually get nearby and look worried, and he won't take my help. But.
And no, you've helped. Your mass comes in handy,
and his hammer is
right. But yeah, it should require a lot of force, and I am not shocked at all that it would break a persimmon bench dog
or any bench dog.
Well, not a metal one, but any wooden one. It takes a lot of force.
Yep. You've got a strap that you use to help.
I have a strap, but the other thing that helps is to artificially lengthen the length.
Right.
Artificially lengthen the length, but to like add a clamp to the end of it so that you have a longer lever, and that makes it easier to pull it around the form.
So like Archimedes.
Yes, like Archimedes.
Okay, that's my math knowledge right there. I'm done. I just started building Chris's 6-stick comb back. My head is also full of Langsner, Brown, and Williams. That sounds crowded. Langsner, page 157, Chairmaker's Workshop, is shown having saddled the seat. You don't want to show that page.
Oh, no, that's clear.
All right. He is now boring the leg mortises through the seat top. This must produce a clean mortise hole on the top, but looks awkward to do. Have you experimented with this approach to compare drilling through the top or bottom first?
Yeah. So yeah, there's about, I'd say half the chairmakers drill leg mortises through the top of the seat, and the other half bore from the bottom. I think both work fine. I mean, you're not going to change my mind, but I'm not going to change Greg Pennington's mind about it. I have my reasons for doing it, but that relate to my order of operations and also just how my brain thinks. And I don't worry about tear out on the seat because I saddle after.
Right.
I bore. Yes, I have experimented with it, and it works, but it just doesn't suit the way my the geometry in my headspace works.
All right, part 2.
Ooh.
One author suggested splitting the tenons for the stretchers with a chisel rather than sawing them to receive a wedge. Would this be done with the tenon already in its mortise for support, or would it be done before assembling the joint? It looks a bit too easy to mess up the split freehand.
You split it when it's glued in together, and so you just take a chisel that is the same width as the tenon. That's how I learned to do it first in 2003 with Dave Fleming. You didn't saw a kerf in any of the tenons, and you would just split it. It's very safe because the tenon's constrained by the mortise around it, so you're not gonna like split things out. But the problem is that the reason I don't do it is because if you have a really tight joint, you don't get a good split. And so it can be in hardwoods, in tight situations, almost impossible to get a wedge in. If you have a kerf, it's always possible to get a wedge in.
Once in a while, I know that you've forgotten to saw the kerf.
When I forget to saw the kerf, however, I jump on that wedge, split the wedge train. It works great. I love it. I'm glad I thought of it.
Okay, so I know the answer to this one. After screwing a 2x4 or something else to the underside of a seat to then fix it in a vise, how do you deal with the screw holes afterward? Leave them as fingerprints, or do you have a magic swoosh to make them disappear? Asked Peter.
Go ahead, you can answer.
The holes stay there.
I've pegged them for some people because I knew they were fussy, but I just leave them.
Yeah, as would I. New chair maker here. I recently purchased a scorp, and I'm finding the sharpening to be tricky and my results inconsistent. How do you sharpen your scorp? Asked Phil.
I used to sharpen it with like a carving tool, meaning I would just constantly stroke the edge with sandpaper wrapped around a dowel, and after every half saddle of a seat, I would get it and just keep tuning up the edge. And that was with my first scorp, which I just had for 17 years, yeah. And I never had to grind it. It's in the red chest, but I never had to grind that. And it's still sharp as the day it was made. And that's one way of doing it. That's how carvers keep their tools in top shape. Now I use a thing called razor sharp system, which is a cardboard wheel on a grinder. And it's this hard cardboard wheel. You can also use a felt wheel, which also works fine. And then you charge it with some rouge and zip it across the blade.
And then you do it on the bench when Megan wasn't aware of it, and get rouge all over the bench, which then gets onto my stuff.
Yeah, that's what you do. But that's how I do it. And then I take the burr off with the piece of sandpaper wrapped around a stick, and it takes practice.
Yeah.
It really does. And I would probably not jump to the razor sharp system immediately. I'd probably start with slipstones or sandpaper.
Something that works slowly.
Something so you screw it up one stroke at a time.
Yeah. Okay. Ooh, this is a long one. I've read my digital copy of The Stick Chair, and I loved every word. And having read it and almost everything else Chris has published, I'm so sorry. I feel like I know the canned answers to the following question, but I'm hoping for a more practical response. I'm about to build my first Welsh stick chair, and I have access to 8/4 of almost every domestic wood in Northeast Indiana, but I can't decide which species to use for the seat. I want the species to match the rest of the wood used in the chair and to provide the same depth and character that I see in Chris's work, Chris Williams' work, and even John Brown's work. But as I've worked through the different options, each of the species has eliminated itself. Some seem too hard and some too soft, some too loud and some too boring. So, knowing that I'm about to build my first of many such chairs and that I want this unhealthy obsession to continue for years, which species do you recommend? Something that would draw compliments and incentivize additional builds. Just freaking tell me what I should use.
Oak.
I could have just stopped earlier.
Oak or ash, yeah, that's going to look good. And you can build the rest of the chair out of oak or ash. And so you can find a seat that has some nice, figure to it. And
most of the oak on the east side of the Rockies comes from Indiana, so
yeah,
or passes through Indiana.
Yeah, but white oak or red oak, and you will get really good at carving the seat and sharpening. But I make oak seats, and I hate them, but I make them all. I still continue to make them because they look good.
Yep.
So it's a great American wood. The American oaks, and makes a great chair.
Okay, this might be better demoed, but I have a question about Welsh stick chairs. How do you line up the angles between the arm bow and the seat so they match up? Is there a jig or set of jigs you use? Do you make all the angles on the arm bow first, then move to the seat, or do you set up a jig and move one by one down the line? Asked Thomas.
Yeah, if you look on the blog, I think a couple weeks ago I did a blog entry showing how I use a laser to guide me, but I basically drill with the arm bow suspended over the seat. I drill through both, and I have the laser at 90 degrees to where I'm standing, in new work.
And you do have a jig of sorts. It holds the arm bow at the right level and at the right angle, which is none to the seat.
Yeah, you have to do that.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, you have no choice.
Right.
That's the minimum. But I don't have any of the other fancy jigs that sort of, keep the whole thing. Those are cool, but I don't need them. I mean, I really don't even need the laser after building a few of the chairs.
Aw, my job's to help him with the laser.
Yeah.
He doesn't need me anymore.
That's not true.
It is true, but right.
But check out that blog entry
Yeah.
and it'll explain. You'll see some photos and drawings that kind of lay it out. Or
Stop that. I am building the stick chair from ADB. I have tried to get a 5/8 inch tapered tenon cutter and reamer for some time. They remain out of stock. I bought a 1/2 inch cutter and matching reamer. I checked the math, and the surface area of a 1/2 inch circle is significantly smaller than 5/8, but because the tenon is tapered, I am hoping it will not lose that much strength. Will the leg joints be significantly weaker? Do I risk the chair collapsing, or should I put stretchers in to add strength to the support system?
Wow. Well, probably what I would do is switch gears and use one of the handmade reamers and tenon cutters that you can get from makers like Ilya Bazari, and there are a bunch of other people. Like if you go to the chair makers, what is it called that Aspen runs?
Oh, shoot.
Chair makers toolbox.
Yes.
There are people there who make them. Lots of people make them, and it's basically a pencil sharpener and a reamer, and they are like these.
I don't see the ring.
And I don't, oh no, these are the reamers,
Yeah,
but
you
I
don't
don't
have
have
the-
the pencil sharpener.
Yeah.
But these are 6 degrees instead of 11. They both work great. And those are widely available if you're having problems getting them from Lee Valley.
Yep.
I have made some stools with the 1/2 inch, and yeah, you can get away with it. But
an
with
undercarriage in?
stretchers and stuff. But I don't know why the 5/8 just seems a little more robust, even though it's not that much bigger. But it feels different. But yeah, try some of the other ones out there if you can't wait for the 5/8 inch tapered reamer from Lee Valley.
I am building the form to steam bend the crest. I don't have a bandsaw, so my finished form may be a little rough. I read that Brian Boggs puts thin cawls in his steam bending form to smooth things out. Have you tried this?
Nope.
Okay.
No, if I were building the form, I would, without a bandsaw, I would plane it
Or
until it
rasp it
was
or plane it or
yeah,
something.
rasp it or
Yeah.
plane it or anything to get it as smooth as possible.
Borrow your neighbor's bandsaw.
Yeah, but I mean, if Brian says it works,
It works.
it works.
Brian's amazing with his jigs.
Yeah.
So. Question. Can you use stick chairs for seating at an outdoor dinner table? If so, are there any changes you would make for this scenario?
Yeah, I would paint them. If you're leaving them outdoors, I would paint them.
They don't weigh much, I'd bring them in.
Yeah, you bring them in when it rains, just like you would any good wooden furniture.
But yes, you can use them for seating at an outdoor dinner table.
Yeah, but I might change, I mean, you could change the glue to epoxy if you wanted to. I wouldn't do that.
Type Bond 3.
I wouldn't do that either. I would probably
I
still
would just
use,
bring them in.
I would probably still use hide glue. I would paint them with a nice paint. I would keep that paint maintained so that the water didn't get into the joints.
Yep.
And I'd bring them in when it rains.
Okay.
But I wouldn't worry too much if they got wet.
Well, this one is all you. Beside the fancy turnings, what is the difference between a Swords stick chair and a Windsor chair, asks Andy.
Well, Windsor chairs were made by professionals for commercial sale, and stick chairs generally were made by amateurs or people, farmers, who actually were talented woodworkers but weren't dedicated chair makers. And a lot of times they were made just for family members or for, no, I'm fine, or for the people in their village. And so really the difference is not in the construction. They're both constructed the same way, though there are small differences in how the joints were made. But they're essentially very similar. It's just kind of like where they started from. And also, Windsor chairs have very defined forms, like the balloon back, the sack back, the fan back. These kind of very well-defined forms, whereas stick chairs can be what was he smoking, what kind of peyote did they have? I mean, just like it's all over the map, and that's
Maybe it
one
was
of their
the
charms.
Lagavulin.
Maybe they were drinking Lagavulin.
The Scottish were drinking the Lagavulin.
Yes, to making the Darvel chairs. So they're really essentially, kind of the same construction, but from very different places in the heart.
Okay. I am obsessed with the designs of Jarrett Rietveld. As a renowned chair commentator, sitter maker, that would be you. I've lost my place.
Renowned sitter.
I'm a renowned sitter. He's a renowned maker. What are your thoughts on his design, specifically the zigzag chair,
Oh, am I just supposed to comment? I've sat on this one.
the red and blue chair,
Okay.
and the Berlin chair? Blah.
Yeah. They're beautiful design experiments, all of them. No, and I say that as like, that's cool and that's important in pushing, the design language forward. Some of these are also real cool constructional questions, engineering questions. As chairs, they're interesting, I would say. I wouldn't want to sit in them long term. I would, this one, people
I like
have told
this one
me,
more.
People have told me that one's comfortable, and Dave Teal built a copy of it, and I sat in it. It was like sitting in an Adirondack chair with a straight back.
Right.
It wasn't that bad, but no, I mean, it wasn't that bad. It's an
I praise.
all-wood chair.
I praise.
This one, the straight back is probably going to make it difficult. I'd say this is like 4 cushions and 6 sheepskins.
And a few drinks.
And a few drinks. I have sat in this one, and it's like, yeah, you perch there for a while, you're fine, but you're not going to sit in it all night. So,
Which might be useful.
so I think they are triumphs of design, but not of comfort.
Okay. With green woodworking, a draw knife, spoke shave, hand plane, or a few other tools create finished surfaces with no sanding needed. I agree that the surfaces look good and feel great to the touch. However, it seems that these surfaces are almost always sanded during the finishing process. It seems that this sanding would have a negative effect on the sliced fiber surfaces. Is there a, I lost my earring. Is there a way around this, or does the hand tool surface still stand out when sanded during the finishing process? Asked Brent.
Yeah, there's a lot.
There's a lot in there.
There's a lot in that question, but I think the best thing to say is that if you take a surface and you hand plane it, and then you take a surface and you prepare it properly with sandpaper, and you put a clear finish on it, 99 out of 100 people can't tell the difference.
Right.
And not in the feel, not in the look, the chatoyance.
Chatoyance.
And so I think the traditional way that people prepped wood, from the 18th century was plane until you can't plane anymore, scrape out the tear out, use very fine sandpaper to blend the two surfaces, and then finish it.
Yep.
And that's very reasonable and not masochistic, and that's kind of the system we use here in this shop. However, if you like to work straight from the tools, go with God, that's great, but you're not producing a surface that is superior to a well-sanded surface.
Nor is using some type of abrasive contemporary. It's been around for longer than hand planes. So.
Yep, the Egyptians
So
used
don't feel
sandstone.
like you're, ruining the hand tool experience if you use an abrasive. You're not.
No, abrasives have a long, long history. Chagrin and abrasive reed and all that
horsetail
stuff.
reed. And,
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. I'm interested in building counter-height vernacular stools. Will the stick chair book get me 90% of the way there?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I think it will. And the other 10% is finding, the height you want. But there's also a countertop height stool in the Anarchist design book too. If you have that, you don't have to buy the stick chair.
There is?
Mm-hmm. There's that 3-legged.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. What is your favorite stout? It was a two-parter.
Ooh, it is Kentucky Bourbon, the Kentucky Bourbon Stout, breakfast stout from Founders.
Oh, that's nice, because my favorite stout is Kentucky Bourbon.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry. Could you build a stick chair completely using only a Roman workbench? Would there be any less than ideal parts in the process? Asks Dale.
No.
No, you couldn't build it using
Yes,
it?
you can.
Okay.
But no, yes, you can. It's a
I know you
great.
can.
It's great. Yeah, she's seen me do it all the time, especially if you have a vise on it. Boy, yeah, there's no downside.
And you get to sit down for a lot of it.
Oh, which is great. Yeah, because we are renowned sitters.
That's right, especially me. I can sit and watch him. I'm sorry. Benches. We have moved on to the bench portion of our program here. After you had a chance to use a Moravian workbench and several Roubo workbenches, and well, let's face it, a gazillion others, What are your thoughts on building a Roubo top with a Moravian undercarriage? Specifically, aesthetics, functionality, and practicality.
Yeah, so it's a party up top.
That's right.
And a Moravian religious experience down below.
God, let's reverse those. It sounds more fun.
Yeah, it's a mullet bench. No, that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's totally fine. Those two have been married before, and they weren't divorced. So yeah, go ahead, go for it. I haven't built one like that, but I've seen people do it, and I don't know of any disadvantages that kind of ring a danger bell.
Okay. I'm building a Moravian workbench that is...
Go talk to Will Myers.
76.
Will Myers live cast is going on in 10 minutes.
We don't care what size this is. What is your recommended Holdfast hole placement for the limited real estate of the Moravian bench? The bench will have a leg vise and planing stop in standard configuration.
Yeah, so with a Moravian bench, you only have about 13 inches.
And then you have a tool well. Oh.
Yeah, wow, I've turned you so well. So you have only like 13 inches of solid top, and so how do you pattern
Will.
the Holdfast? You know, I haven't really ever done that.
It's about like this, actually.
Yeah, you could get away with this. This isn't bad. So these are about 4 inches
Well,
from the front.
honestly, if it were me, I would just put them where I need them. I wouldn't worry about the pattern so much.
Oh, I love the pattern.
I know you do.
It's so important to using for the reach, you know, because each Holdfast has a certain reach. And so these are
I know, so
there's
decide
a
where you
system.
need them. So, but you could use the one that's in the free Workbench design book and adjust it slightly for the depth, and it would work fine.
That uses 3 rows. I probably would do it like this.
So you
Use
do two of them.
do 2 of the rows. Keep it about 4 inches, 3 or 4 inches from the edges. Offset them so that, you know, if the Holdfast has an 8-inch reach, that, you know, they would almost touch, and that will give you full coverage.
Sure. But I mean, I look at the holes in mine, I look at the holes in yours. I only ever use like 2 or 3 of them. So
I use all the holes.
I'm just moving on now. Regarding hand flattening my Roubo bench, how do you prevent spelching of the edges and of blah, blah, blah? How do you prevent spelching of the edges of all the dog holes?
I don't.
Right, okay. I guess
You can round it over
Yeah,
with
you
some
round it
sandpaper,
over.
or you could
Yeah.
take a countersink if you wanted to.
like that one.
Easy, woman.
Sorry. That bench over there that you can't see, everything is, oh my goodness.
I didn't set the depth on the router, okay?
Sorry. I've settled on building the anarchist workbench,
Yay.
but I would like to build it in such a way that it can be knocked down next year and moved from England to France. Well, aren't we just showing off? Where it would then become...
Can I come with you?
Can I come? Not now, because you're being a bitch. Okay. Move from England to France, where it would then become fixed. Could you make any recommendations on joinery adaptions, please?
Yeah, I would probably use bolts, you know, the bench bolts.
So instead of draw boring it, use bench bolts?
Yeah, use bench bolts.
He wants to use wedge through tenons, perhaps. That sounds like a lot of work.
It's hard to dig them out.
Yeah.
I've done that. But if, and that's, so use bench bolts for affixing the base. You know, so make the ends, draw bore the ends, and then the long stretchers use the bed bolts / bench bolts that Benchcrafted or Lee Valley sell. For the top, you can just run a lag bolt through the tenon, and that would hold everything. It wouldn't look pretty, but run a lag bolt through the front edge, and then maybe cap it or something.
And then I asked if it could be draw bored at a later date when reaching its final shop.
Yeah, it could, but you'll probably be fine with the, you know, the bench bolts. The good bench bolts will, you know, you might have to tighten them for a few years.
And if you don't like the way it looks, I guess you could take them out and put pegs in instead. But
and then draw bore.
You
could. But there are some issues that make that difficult because you have a channel going through the center of the tenon that you wouldn't want to put a peg through.
True.
So I probably would just, you know, settle on bench bolts and be happy with your decision.
Okay. This one kills me. I am 6'4" and have the same frame as Chris. And am currently building, he's not 6'4", he's 6'3" and 5/8".
True.
And that was 10 years ago.
Yeah, I'm probably 6.
And have the same frame as Chris. And I'm currently building the AWB at a total height of, and here it comes, 37 inches as part of my back saving and woodworking longevity plan. How tall is Chris? 6'3" and 5/8".
Let's say 6'3".
And does he have any back saving tips at the workbench for the taller timber? 37's really tall.
Yeah, I think 37 is tall, but if I would start out there,
Sure,
and
you can always make it shorter.
Always make it shorter.
That would be like up to here on me.
Would be funny.
Just set my chest on top of it. I won't.
And
Sorry.
we're back. But
Cheers.
I would say that the best back saving tip I can give you is to get a Moxon vise for dovetailing. That was the biggest change because it raised it up. Because it's a sawing those dovetails. If you're even down at 37.
So that would lift up to 41 inches.
Yeah. So when you're looking up as you dovetail. But the Moxon is the best back saving tip that I have.
Yeah,
and
that's
then,
true.
And the other one is don't lift the bench. Just slide it around on.
I make you lift my bench like every other day.
Yeah, I know.
That's your own damn fault.
I know.
Okay. Right. I plan to make a Roman workbench. I have read Ingenious Mechanics 3 times and read every blog post and video about them that I could find. My bench will be a hybrid of those presented in the book. I have 3 lifetimes worth of 100-year-old southern yellow pine columns that started life in an old church. Oh, you're going to hell if you use those, I guess.
Or to heaven.
Or to heaven. My columns are 8 inches by 10, so if I use the solid slab, it would only be 10 inches wide. Do you think this is wide enough to be useful? If wider is recommended, and I think all of your examples in the book are wider, should I get other wood and keep the top solid, or is laminating dense, resinous southern yellow pine a good way to go? Asks Bill.
I think 10's fine. I've worked on ones that are 10, and there's not really any big problem. Mine is 11. The one I work on now is 11 and a quarter or something. So it's too wide is the problem. Too narrow is not the problem.
Yeah,
too
because
wide
you can't
is
sit on it if it's
right.
too
You
wide.
can't sit on them. You feel like you're at the proctologist. So
Not me.
not you, but we probably
The gynecologist.
It's been an hour, and we probably should just get to the demos because John Cashman is falling asleep.
Oh,
And we can answer maybe some of these on the line.
there's only 3 left.
Okay, well, if you think, okay.
All right.
We're
Not so recently, I built a Dutch tool chest and used the Horton Brass's DTC lift and hasp. Well, I use the lift so far, I can't figure out how to locate and mark for the hasp and its screws. So I don't know if we can see this.
Roll it over.
I'm coming over with it. It's pretty easy. There's just a mortise here that's mortised into the lid. So the hinge not the hinge gain, the barrel is mortised into the lid, and it's just centered. And then it just drops down on top. So it's actually pretty easy. You're probably overthinking it, which is my job, to overthink things. I do it all the time. What color blue milk paint is your large tool chest? That must be for me. And it is not milk paint, Fred, because I screwed it up and didn't do the number one thing you should do when testing out a new process, and that is you should do a test board. I did not, and we had an open house the next day. So my big blue tool chest is actually Benjamin Moore slate teal, because it was the closest thing I could find to the milk paint peacock color that I effed up by not testing the top coat. And last, I use a long wooden joiner plane, 28 inches. I want to build a tool chest that would fit it, but as a beginner, I'm interested in something that gets built fast so I can get on with my life. So should I build a DTC, even if having it long enough for my plane would defeat the purpose? Sure. You don't have to be able to lift it, just make it a little longer.
Build a longer
Dutch
one.
Yep.
Let's
That's
go.
it. Okay.
We're going to go do some demos. Will we just hold tight, John Cashman?
Yeah, sorry, John.
Okay, we're going mobile here. All right.
You didn't trust me to unscrew it?
I didn't.
Nice.
Okay, so I'm going to show how I do sticks, and I'm going to tenon the stick and then shape it on the Roman workbench. First, I'm going to do a short stick. So I do these in one of these high vices from Benchcrafted. So you have to level the stick in there. And I have equal amounts sticking out on either side of the vise. And you notice the vise is cocked by about 2 degrees, 2.3 degrees. That's important here, and I'll show you why. So now I line up the drill, and I get the bubble level up, and I get it in the middle. I use firm pressure, and I start slowly for a few strokes, and then I start to increase speed. And that gets it very close to centered. Now, if I have put it in the vise correctly and I have it on equal amounts on either side, I can just come over here and do the other side. And this is why the vise is cocked a little bit, so that I have the room to get my hip in here. If Megan works in your shop, she will howl when this thing makes a squeaky noise.
She will.
So we have blast or dry lube, and we put a squirt in there, and that silences the Megan howls. And
No, it doesn't.
And then so I come here, and then I. So now this stick is ready to be shaped. And I have a tenon that goes into the arm and a tenon that goes into the seat. So we'll go over here. I always work with the window off to the side because I can see the facets appearing and disappearing on here. And all I do is push it up against this block, which was shown in Hulo. This is a 1/2 inch tall. Then that's very important. So this is a 1/2 inch tall, and that helps guide you during the process. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take a block plane, and I'm just going to set it fairly rank, and I'm going to try to remove the facets. I'm not going to work on the flats. I'm just going to keep turning it around and getting the facets.
What does ranked mean for those who are new to this?
I'm taking a strong cut. A thick shaving, even though it doesn't really look like it right now because I'm just taking the facets down. And the other thing that's important is you can see I have the plane at about 45 degrees. And that allows me to take a thicker cut because the sole doesn't get in the way and deny the iron the access to the wood.
And that 1/2 inch is important because it allows your plane body to clear it?
Yes, so thank you. So now this is a 5/8 inch tenon, so I'm not going to be ramming into the block, but it also is going to serve as a guide for me when I do the long sticks, which we'll see here in a minute. So I keep working around until I remove all the facets, which is where I am now. And now I can just bring down the shoulder until the shoulder is where I want it. And I do want a shoulder on this, and I could like blend this directly into the tenon in one nice beautiful swoop, but I want a tiny little shoulder there. And that little shoulder then, when I put it on the arm and I wedge this from the top, the arm is going to rest on that shoulder, and it is not going to, go down below where I want it. And so it's going to lock in there, and then into the seat, this little shoulder is going to fill up any gap that I might have. And I can't believe I would never have a gap.
You would never have a gap.
Of course I have gaps, but I would drive that in, and that tiny little shoulder fills in the hole. So that's how I do short sticks with a block plane. The long sticks, I start with a jack. And so I have 10 in these on one end, so this goes into the seat, and this is what passes through the arm and then goes up to the comb. So I'm going to take my jack plane, one-handed, I'm going to grab it right where the tenon starts, and I'm going to do 3 strokes on an arris or a facet. And then so it's one, like a tapering stroke. And once again, I'm trying to find those facets and knock them down. And so you can first stroke is about half the length of the tool, the second stroke is the length of the tool, and the third stroke starts all the way here back with my thumb. And I'm going to just keep going around and around until I've 1, removed all the facets, and 2, I've also reduced this stick at its tip to a certain point. And so I'm going until this starts out as 3/4 of an inch, and then it'll be shaved down to 5/8, and then eventually it'll be shaved down to 9/16. And when it gets to 9/16, that's when I'm going to change the pattern. So here, I'll show you what that looks like. So here's a stick that's a little further along, and you can see I'm like 1/16 above my 1/2 inch block. And when I get to this point, I'm not going to do tapering cuts anymore. I'm going to take just long strokes along the whole stick that take it down. And the reason I need to do this is because you get a lot of meat down here that needs to be wasted away so this will pass through the arm bow. If I just kept making a taper cut, it would get really thin up at the top, and stay fairly thick down here where it needs to pass through the arm bow at 5/8 of an inch. So I keep working around here until basically I can't make a cut anymore. So this will come down to 1/2 inch. And at that point, this is basically a 1/2 inch tenon. And that by that point, this will usually pass through a 5/8 inch mortise in the arm, about 8 or 9 inches above the seat. So, a couple questions that I know people have. One is what about tear out? Aren't you worried about tear out? Not really worried about tear out at all. I don't have any tear out on this stick because I sawed it out completely straight. Sometimes you will get a little tear out, and if you do get some, I clean it up at the end with the block plane. And the magic thing about this block plane, this is the power of cabinet making, is that I'm taking a really heavy cut, but I have a very tight mouth on my block plane, and that's why I like an adjustable mouth block plane, and that will remove the tear out. So if I cut that really tight, then even if I have some tear out here, the block plane will immediately remove it because of the tight mouth. And so I finish up here when it's down to a 1/2 inch. Then I throw the stick across the room. Don't worry about it, I'll use this one.
Right.
And then I come back, and just like with the short stick, I use the block plane to taper the bottom part so that I blend it into the tenon and have that tiny little shoulder just like I did on the short sticks. So that's how we do it. One-handed with the jack plane, and that's not hard to do because this jack plane doesn't weigh a lot. That's why I encourage people to buy a vintage jack plane. They weigh like a pound or 2 less than the really expensive new ones. They're also much cheaper, and they don't have to have the high tolerances that the really nice expensive iron does that. If you're gonna buy expensive iron, save that for the block plane or for the smoothing plane. So any questions, Megan?
No.
Okay, I must have done a fine job.
Well, no, it's just I've watched you do this 1,000 times.
1,000 frickin' times. So this is the Roman workbench, and that I work on all the time, almost every day. This is where I clamp my seats into this vise. These are so that
I don't run into it.
Yeah, and I don't run into it. You can kneecap yourself real quickly. But this Hulo block can be removed. And then we have a normal planing stop that I can put in there so I can plane against it. I drill the seats on here, and it is heaven to drill the seats because the chair isn't skittering all around the shop. It's clamped to this big bench, and I can stand here and drill down, and life is good. So we have talked way too long.
We have, but
no one is watching.
Right, so because no one's watching, we should show them your countersunk dog holes over there.
Oh, go ahead, Megan. You can end it, and then you say goodbye to them.
I don't want to say goodbye, Christopher. I'm bad at goodbyes. This is what I was making fun of before. This is the bench he built. What is this one called?
The $175 workbench.
It was, yeah, it's all over the internet. Anyway, with a router, I assume you didn't do those by hand.
No, it was an accident. I wanted to put a 64th or 32nd little chamfer so it wouldn't spelch.
Right.
In the day when I cared about spelching
Right.
dog holes, but I didn't set the depth stop. And so the first one I went 3/8 deep, and so I just did them all that way. And then I answered for years questions about it.
Right, and now it is the shipping station.
It is the Megan Fitzpatrick Memorial Shipping Station.
You sound like I'm dead. I don't like it when you call
No,
it that.
you're just to be memorialized. So.
Okay.
Okay. Well, we're going to leave. Thank you, sir. Sorry this went so long.
Bye.
Goodbye. And